That was the toughest few minutes. Thank you so much to the faculty of Ateneo, to the students of Ateneo. As you can tell, you don't have to know exactly where you need to wind up from a pre-med to whatever I am today. Congratulations to the class of 2015. What you need to know is what your mission. And listening to Ryan, it sounds like Ateneo has given you what that mission can be, and now you need to make it real for yourself so that you can make those tough decisions as you go forward. Let me tell you about the world you're coming into. Not that you don't know it, but on the other side, at 50-something, I don't mind telling you my age, the world looks very different. You're coming of age in a science fiction world, one that may seem like it's spinning out of control because it's powered by technology that is changing everything. That's an opportunity and a crisis. It's changing everything from the way we think, the way we communicate, and that affects the way we act. You've heard about my fascination with social media, the impact of social media, both good and evil. That's only the tip of the iceberg. Technology's network effects, when things spread virally, these network effects are creating new global coalitions and alliances. From the good, saving the environment, climate change, to protecting the youth from ISIS, the Islamic State, which has learned to use social media more effectively and far better than many news organizations and governments. Our principles of economics and business, the way we build companies, they are in massive upheaval. It is happening globally, and it is here in the Philippines. In 2011, Babson's Olin Graduate School of Business predicted that in 10 years, 40% of existing Fortune 500 companies would no longer survive. Richard Foster of Yale University estimates the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company has decreased from my time, 67 years. That's how long an S&P 500 company would last. This is before my time. This is in the 1920s. To today, 15 years, 1-5, right? 67 years to 15 years. For centuries, we built businesses in a linear production world where the producer produces something and the consumer buys it, right? But you now live in a world where the consumer also becomes a producer and sells it right back. And that's a huge thing. That makes you have companies like Uber, Waze, Airbnb. Rappler is 3 years old in January. It couldn't have existed just 5 years ago. Technology allows us to do more with far less. In 2012, Eastman Kodak, your parents know Kodak, which invented and then rejected the digital camera, declared bankruptcy in 2012 at about the same time that a startup called Instagram, 3 years in business with just 13 employees, was bought by Facebook for $1 billion. And this happened while Kodak still owned the patents for digital photography. Creative destruction, right? Exponential growth companies are challenging traditional business models because they're growing and moving 10 times faster. The only constant in your world today is change, and the rate of change is accelerating. If you only learn and follow today's best practices, you've already failed, because that will only lead to a dead end. Now juxtapose this against the two faces of the Philippines today. Ryan told you about some of it. The good news first, right? So, because they always say journalists only tell you the bad news. The good news is that we're the second best performing economy behind China. But just scratch a little bit beneath the surface and you see, we all know how much we're stuck in traffic, the cracking infrastructure, the demographic shifts, the gap between the rich and the poor, between the haves and have-nots, our weak institutions, endemic corruption, a lack of transparency, and accountability. These three overlapping realities show you why now, more than ever, the Philippines needs leaders, not just in government. That's the easy thing people think about right away, but in business and social enterprises, and not connect the dots bureaucratic top-down leaders, but competent, self-aware, the buck stops here mavericks willing to lead us down a different path. There's an opportunity for you. You can actually flip businesses upside down. You can flip governance upside down, like Lee Kuan Yew did for Singapore. His death this week marks the end of an era for Southeast Asia. The last time I spoke with him, I asked him, what advice would he give leaders? That was the time I decided to leave CNN and come home and lead a news network in the Philippines. He said, and I won't ever forget this, he said, first, don't try and seek popularity. Popularity is an evanescent, fickle thing. Gain respect. That's not easy to achieve, and if you don't misbehave or squander it, it will last. He added, this modern society, they take straw polls, and they govern according to what the polls show, which way the wind is blowing. I think that's a disaster. That's not leadership. I love that. Leadership requires courage, and there are many different kinds our world needs today. I know how old you are, so that's why I told you how old I was. I was a journalist before some of you were born. To me, journalism is a calling. It tests you physically, mentally, spiritually. The first type of courage, I think, is the easiest. As a war zone correspondent, courage was about going in when others were leaving and staying with the story, because being there makes a difference. It's about being responsible for the actions and the lives of the people who follow you. And because you take that responsibility, making sure your choices go beyond your own selfish interests. Then there's inner courage, and this I wish for you. Self-control. Another man who died recently actually symbolized that for me, and don't laugh. Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock, right? The Vulcan who controlled his emotions. When you're a leader, you can't afford to lose it. You can't be self-indulgent. And when I felt on the verge of doing that, I thought of Mr. Spock. Whether in Indonesia, East Timor, Kashmir, or Pakistan, conflict reporting requires presence of mind and clarity of thought. You can't do that if you're lost in emotions or you're in a blame game when things go wrong. All that is a waste of time and energy. And if you wallow in emotions, you will make the wrong decision. Save it for later. Solve the problem first. From something as basic as last-minute information coming in before a live shot, these TV reporters know this, you absorb it, instantly organize it in your head, maintain clarity of thought for the big picture to deliver the information in the simplest way possible when the anchor tosses to you. That's the easy test for a reporter. A harder one is staying present tense on coverage, like the time a bomb exploded in Pakistan and my cameraman rushed in because he wanted to get better shots. But I remembered the way terrorists operated, their, we would call it modus operandi, and I pulled him back. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a second larger bomb exploded, harming those who were drawn in by the first one. That's the point of the first bomb. It's a little one, bring everyone in, and then a second one kills the people who go in. Or one of the toughest moral choices I've had to make, and this one was in East Timor. It was the final days of the Indonesian military's scorched earth policy. They just killed. When they were killing pro-independence supporters, my team and I were leaving the capital, Dili, to head to Suwai, which is about 4 hours away by land. We were about halfway there when we stopped for gas, and A man, a friend, a source came running to the car. This guy is normally very calm. Nothing disturbs him. Except this time, he was definitely emotional. He asked for a ride back to Delhi because he said he was being hunted and that he feared for his life. It was a dilemma, and until today, I don't know whether I made the right choice. I couldn't turn the car around because we needed to get to Sawai because of these escalating reports of violence. I couldn't bring him with us because it would take him directly to the military. The military then we would become targets as well, right? Making all of us vulnerable. Our first responsibility was to get the story for our global audience. So I told him that when we came back through later that night, that we would pick him up and bring him back to the capital. When we came back, it was dark, we were about an hour late, and he wasn't there. Only later would I found out that he had been killed. In situations of anarchy and war, it's hard to distinguish right from wrong. There is only your mission, the purpose you are there. Then there's the courage of your convictions, speaking against injustice, abuse of power, taking a position based on principles, drawing the line you will never cross. I talk about that a lot because this is the only way you will stick to the ideals you have now. This is maybe the largest group of non-corrupt people in one room. You have to stay that way. And the reason you will stay that way is because in your head, you draw that line very clearly so that whatever tests you, you know that if you move from this side to this side, that you will become evil. When I returned to the Philippines at the end of 2004 and headed the largest news group in our country, this is the courage I needed because I wanted to change culture. It was standing up to vested interests of power, from the owners to politicians to government to corporations, lobby groups, right? And the best lobby groups are our friends. We took a zero-tolerance approach to corruption, firing anyone found guilty of accepting or soliciting a bribe. We tried to build a culture of transparency, of meritocracy, to eliminate feudal ways of management and give our people a level playing field. It didn't make me popular. But again, I heard Lee Kuan Yew. How did he fight corruption? Well, he first jailed the corrupt ministers, many of whom were his friends. I've never lost as many friends as the time when I was heading a network news group. Nor have I been stabbed so often in the back. People will stab you in the back, and they do it because they feel they have to. But I think that it left a longer lasting mark on their character than the temporary pain that it caused me. It's okay. I think Mr. Spock, and I remember Lee Kuan Yew. How do you deal with critics? You will have critics. You listen, you learn, change if you need to. But also keep in mind that if you're trying to fight conventional thinking, you will be criticized. Actually, come to think of it, if you're not being criticized, well, you're probably not working hard enough to change the status quo. And this status quo, ladies and gentlemen, is something we need to change. Now let's talk about the hardest kind of courage. How many of you have seen the movie about Stephen Hawking, The Theory of Everything? Have you seen that movie? Only a few. And this is the thing that's hard. You know, The Theory of Everything only lasted such a short time in the movie theaters. When Hawking was a little older than you, when he was 21 years old, he was diagnosed with ALS, a motor neuron disease, leaving his mind trapped in a body he cannot control. His young girlfriend, Jane, married him and found the courage to love and care for him, even as his body degenerated. He became trapped in his body. The simplest things that we take for granted, like taking a step or moving a finger, moving a hand, he couldn't do. But his insatiable curiosity about the world allowed him to bridge the gap between knowledge and reality, to explore questions about the beginning of time and even the existence of God. This is the courage we all need to be there through the painful, back-breaking choices and moments of just getting through the hard business of living, eating a meal, taking a bath, or even just communicating a thought. They're all things he couldn't do. It is painful and real, and it made me think about the true nature of courage and the strength of love. Because that is what keeps you through those painful, demanding moments in our lives. The courage of leadership is personal. It is showing up, being there, committing to do the difficult, simple, repetitive tasks, and having the courage to do the right thing, even if everyone is telling you it isn't what you should do, or even if you don't want to do it. It's being able to make life and death decisions, to have the ability to set aside your own selfish interests so you can help the people you love live better lives. The movie ends with the voice of the real Stephen Hawking, the brilliant scientist, saying this. This is a great quote. He said, "We are all different. However bad life may seem, there is always something you can succeed at. While there is life, there is hope. While there is life, there is hope." That is coming from a man trapped inside his body in a wheelchair. How can anyone complain after hearing that, right? All my problems disappeared. I realized I had no problems. Our world demands courage and love. The courage to commit, to stay the course, to do the hard things that build character and integrity. And I hope the more than 2,000 of you here have that, because that is a spark plug for our nation. Why would you do that? That comes from love. Love of your partner, your family, your friends, the company you will join, your nation. Because this is a nation we love. It's been nearly 30 years since I sat where you were. And I'm so proud that I still have the same ideals. It's been really, really tested, but I still have those ideals. These ideals are what we poured into Rappler, a truly independent, corruption-free news group. We started it with just 12 people. 12 people, that's all it took, and technology allowed us to grow extremely fast in ways I wouldn't have thought possible in both reach and revenue. We use technology to harness the zeitgeist of our people, because our people want something better, and to help build our institutions bottom up. It's a world of collaboration, and together we can challenge the old power structures and give new meaning to people power, new meaning to democracy. This is a wonderful fusion of experience from the old. In Rappler, there are a handful of 40 and 50-somethings combined with the smartest, most idealistic digital natives I could find. Our 20-somethings passion, that energizes me every day. And one of them, while handling his full-time, very demanding job and his very demanding, very bitchy bosses, made time to go to school. So congratulations, Paterno S. Maquel, and two other reporters who also made time to go to school, Chara Zambrano, another idealistic reporter from ABS, and Victoria Tulad from GMA7. We in Rappler believe that solving our nation's problems begin with stamping out corruption. It's not something we say. Our editors have written books on it. Chay Hofilenya wrote the book on media corruption. Marites Vitug wrote 2 books on judicial corruption. Our managing editor, Glenn De Gloria, along with 2 other editors, Gemma Mendoza and Aris Rufo, wrote the book on military corruption. And Aris wrote the book on corruption and hypocrisy in the Catholic Church. Power does corrupt. Know that now so that when you have power, you can guard against it. The way we hold it accountable is the way journalists have always held power accountable. You shine the light. And now, journalists have your help. We're not alone. We need to see the way things really work. The corrupted values that make wrong seem right. Until today, I still get an advertiser or two who say, "Hey, we advertised in you. Why did you attack us?" Do you see the implicit values in that? You know that's wrong, right? That question just shows you the values have been corrupted. Nothing personal. Our stories are about the public good, the society we're building, and the mission of journalism, to hold the public and private sectors accountable to the people. Do not accept the world you see today. Really, you can solve the problems that our country is facing in completely new ways. In this room, you have allies. Find them, because you can't do this fight alone. I wish you the courage to lead this change. People still ask me, why do I have hope? Why do I hope that our nation will change? And I want it to change in my lifetime. I want to see it. I have hope because of you. Because of how technology can amplify your ideals and your power. You are the most powerful generation of Filipinos to graduate. And you will be working for people who know far less about that power. You really can change the world. Congratulations again, class of 2015. Sleep well tonight. Dream of a better future. Then get up and make it happen. Thank you.